everyone, Father Jared coming to you. My first video of 2021, so that's exciting stuff. And as we get started in 2021, there's certainly been some interesting happenings already this year, and some things that have caused a lot of disturbance, a lot of upheaval, and a lot of fear in people's hearts. And, as I was reflecting on that and thinking about that, I called to mind, or it just came to me, a scene from The Pacific, a mini-series about the Pacific Front of World War II. And in that series, it follows a couple of, I think, about a number of different Marines, two in particular. And one of those primary characters, primary Marines, after his first couple of days of battle, they had to charge across this, many, many yards across this airfield. And he admits to his captain, to his commanding officer, that he's never been scared in his life than at that moment. And the captain says the only man out here who isn't scared is dead. Pointing out and then going on to explain that what he meant is that each and every one of them has to battle through fear. Each and every man has it. And it's not something that makes this character unique, but in fact it is something that makes all of the men similar. But it's what they do with that fear, and whether they decide to overcome it, or they decide to let something triumph over it, right? And so we hear in John's first letter that there is no fear in love, and that perfect love casts out fear. But if you notice, it says there's no fear in love. But what I think can happen, and what I think is more important for us to focus on, is if we are fearful, if we are scared, if there are worries, that's all normal. That all happens. We all struggle in those areas. However, do we allow the love of Christ for us to trump our fear? Do we allow love itself for our family, for our neighbor, for our God, to impel us to continue moving forward, to encourage us to still move forward in our lives, to still decide that we're going to live? We're going to decide to still take the next right steps in our life, because it doesn't have to be fear in politics. Fear can come in all shapes, sizes, and forms. We can be fearful about what other people are going to think of us. We can be fearful about, what the next day holds, whether or not somebody's going to like us, You can run through a whole host of different things. Fear can instill in us so many ways of acting that are contrary to love. Love does not count what fears will cost us, but instead, love moves us past fear to pursue what is good, what is meaningful, and ultimately what is loving. To pursue what is best for another person, to even pursue what is best for ourselves. And so I think it's important that as we continue to perhaps struggle in our own heart with fears and the things in large scale in our country, but also within the fear that we each struggle with in our own hearts, that we seek to overcome, not by our own power, not by our own doing, but instead by the love of Christ dwelling within us, those of us who have been baptized into his death and his resurrection. That we have been given the strength to overcome the fears that can trump our heart, because love has been poured into our hearts, as we're told in Paul's Paul's only letter to the Romans. And so I think it's important for us to always throw ourselves on that love of Christ. And practically, how do we do that? How do I allow love to trump fear? Well, we have to make a decision that whenever that fear comes up, you just got to speak to it, that whatever it tells you. Look at everything going on in the country, like you should be really scared and you should be paralyzed. You can ask yourself, well, what good does that do me? What good does it do me to just be transfixed on my smartphone, on my TV, and to be fearful? What good does that do me? And then you can remind yourself, well, what's something that I can control? Well, I can do the next right thing. I can care for the person in front of me. I can go home, love my family, help my spouse with the dishes, do the laundry, all those small little loving acts, letting someone that someone you love know that you love them, praying, spending time with our Lord, that if you love him, Spend time with Him. Get to know Him. Instead of allowing fear to govern our lives, to take up our time through social media, through TV, and through just simply being paralyzed in our own thoughts in our own head, instead take actions, take opportunities to love, to again spend time with family, friends, other loved ones. Then also to spend time with the Lord who loves you so much, to allow Him to console your heart during troubling times. It is the greatest strength we have as Christians against fear, is prayer. Not just simply as an action, but because it is an action of love. It's an action which moves us forward. It's an action which lets us know that we're in the hands of a loving Father, and no matter what happens to us, He's going to take care of us. He's going to provide the grace we need to suffer if necessary. So I just encourage each and every one of you to take those opportunities, to not allow fear to govern your life, to take up your time, but instead take actions of love, to love those around you, and ultimately, most importantly, spend time with our Lord who loves you, and then also in turn allows you to love